Today, I'm gonna talk about a CRPG basically made for those of us who really love to immerse ourselves into the lore and history of a game world. Set into one of the more peculiar post-apocalyptic worlds you'll see, this game seems to be aimed at those types of RPG players who really love role-playing and who really appreciate solving problems without having to roll for initiative, if they can help it. This is Age of Decadence. Hello and welcome, dear nonsense viewers. Today's offering comes courtesy of an indie dev studio called Iron Tower Studios. Age of Decadence is a type of game that actually from the get-go makes it pretty clear that not only should you not try to solve all encounters or all conflicts with combat, but that you should actively avoid doing that for pretty obvious reasons, as you'll see throughout the review. So right from that, you know that you're in for a pretty odd CRPG experience, but the guys over at Iron Tower decided to go all out and actually continue with the oddity and set the action, set the game into a really weird post-apocalyptic world.
Age of Decadence is set in a very weird type of post-apocalyptic setting. Instead of it taking place in an alternate future of our real-world civilization, it takes place in the alternate future of a world once dominated by what can only be described as the Roman Empire. The names, titles, and objects in the world are identical to those from the real-world Roman Empire. Although, mind you, the word Roman is never uttered, the organizational structure being simply called the Empire, it's pretty clear from the onset where the inspiration came from. So the Age of Decadence takes place several hundreds of years after a great war that saw sorcerers, demons and gods take to the field, which led to the disintegration of the empire, the ruination of most cities and the destruction of the majority of the civilized world as people knew it. Humanity now being forced to concentrate into only a few urban centers, with the wasteland between them being braved only by raiders and those crazy enough to think that they can grow enough food outside the protection of a major settlement.
So those are the broad strokes of the world that you'll be venturing in, a world where survival is actually a goal in itself and where violence, intrigue and backstabbing are the order of the day.
Despite the fact that the game strongly urges you to not approach your playstyle from the more traditional D&D approach of kicking in the door, killing everything that moves and asking questions never, that isn't always possible. And I think that is where the game doesn't go far enough in offering options to the more non-combatant type. On the other hand, the game does offer everyone the ability to invest into some form of combat skill, and you really shouldn't ignore the ability of using at least one type of weapon. I'd suggest dagger. You're going to spend quite a bit of time talking to and reading what the NPCs in the game have to say, and the great thing is that you can't always be sure that they're being honest or indeed that they know the entire story. It is up to you to take it all in and connect together the disparate pieces of information that you'll be gathering. There's this big mystery that permeates throughout the game world, a mystery relating to things that happened during this great war. The accounts from that era talking about demons and gods showcasing tremendous powers over the elements, as well as, weirdly enough, extra-worldly feats of engineering.
Backstabbing, both literal and figurative, is a daily occurrence, and actually you'll be kinda doing at least some of it. This also means that it can be done to you, so you can't really trust anyone, or you can't really have faith in any of the factions. All you can do is play one or more of the factions against each other or against a different enemy, thus buying yourself time to become powerful enough or skilled enough so that you can avoid being backstabbed.
Of course, this is true if you choose to jump into the intrigues at hand and play a part in the overall scheme of things. A different way of approaching the game is to instead immerse yourself in the lore and history of this very peculiar post-apocalyptic setting and try to put together what actually happened during this mythical Great War. Because suffice to say, stories and reports from the time can be rather conflicting as to who, what, where, when and how. And I can hear you say, okay, this sounds cool and all, but what's the gameplay like?
The internal dynamic of the settlements that you visit and you quest through is not only deeply influenced by your actions, but you actually get to see the consequences of those actions.
You get to directly see and experience the changes that you have caused, depending on which faction side you take and your decisions afterwards. In Fallout, you could see at the end of the game the consequences of your actions. In Age of Decadence, you get much more. And to be honest, the consequences of your actions aren't always positive, or at least they don't lead to positive outcomes for the settlements per se. So you'll want to be careful when moving from one major settlement to another, because you will surely not find the same status quo. Thankfully, the game does tell you what's happened as a result of your meddling, so you're not completely taken off guard. The intrigue and world is so engrossing though that once you do start doing quests, you'll find yourself forgetting what your personal goals were, much like it would happen in real life, to be honest. Also, since combat isn't a major part of the game, depending on how you approach it of course, gathering skill points has to be done by talking to everyone and doing your best at obtaining either direct skills from them. Some will train you a bit in some aspect of character development, or see if you can get some quests from them which you can then try, and the operative word here is try, to complete while still retaining your life, so that you can then gain some skill points to invest into your chosen development path. There are 6 major factions that share and split influence and power in Age of Decadence. There are 3 ancient noble houses, each of them ruling one of the 3 remaining city-states in the world, or as far as you know, the world, each having their own interests and whatnot. And then there is also a trading guild, an assassin's guild, a thieves guild, and the Imperial Guard, which is basically a more or less standalone military guild.
During your stay in the game world and your playthroughs, you will surely have contact with at least one, if not all of the guilds and the factions in the game. But you'll notice that the allegiances tend to shift quite rapidly. In that respect, Age of Decadence is very much like Game of Thrones, but without you actually having to wait for another episode or another season. You can simply continue playing, and at a certain point you'll die, and then you'll reload and take different decisions, and then you'll die, and then you'll reload, and then you'll make different decisions, and then you'll die, and then you'll reload, and so on and so forth.
Besides the many types of characters that you can play as and the varied choices of skills that you can choose from one playthrough to another, keep in mind that the game's factions aren't there just to offer some local color. Joining up with different ones depending on your character's build will lead to wildly different playthroughs. Also, once you get a better grasp of how the world operates, you can then create your own character from scratch as well. There are also many points in the game when you can make all manner of different decisions that will lead to obviously different outcomes further on down the line, even when playing with the same character. There are also several locations in the world that will be out of your reach with certain types of characters, but you can visit with others. Similarly, the various locations pose different problems which you can solve a number of ways or simply ignore. This only amounts to Age of Decadence having a veritable metric fuckton of replay value.
But despite all of this awesomeness, and it's extra awesome, there are some things that aren't quite ideal with the Age of Decadence.
One thing that seems to be lacking from the world are random encounters while traveling. Considering how much you hear about raiders being a problem outside the major settlements, you never meet any during your travels, unless there is a particular location designed around it. Also, there are a lot of things that you can see exist in the world but you can't interact with, most likely due to the fact that it would have affected the economy and also way more stuff to code. But it does annoy you a little bit when you get to the lab of a lore master and you can't look through his stuff and read his notes for some extra morsels of information. Now, about that whole avoiding combat thing. The game makes it pretty clear, and you'll notice this while playing it, how easy it is to get killed. You can get jumped by thugs, lured into traps, or simply die as a result of not so honest combat, although rarely is that combat one-on-one. The major annoyance I had with the game whilst playing a very non-combatant build, a lore master focused on alchemy, impersonation and persuasion, was that the game didn't allow me to solve certain encounters in a different way. It was either one of the many scripted options, and granted there are quite a lot of these depending on your skill sets and choices, or combat. Instead, as a non-athletic bookworm who is into making potions and talking to people, I would have liked the opportunity to poison someone's drink or food or talk someone else into doing it for me. Similarly, considering the fact that I was adamant on minimizing combat, when it did come to combat, I had little choice than to try my luck and then reload the game until I'd luck into surviving an encounter I didn't want to avoid completely. It has happened a couple of times. Instead, it would have been great if the game offered the possibility of hiring guards or mercenaries to travel with me for protection. This last part is actually somewhat of a choice during at least one quest when you can ask for some help from the Imperial Guards to ambush some assassins, but that should have been an option all throughout this very tough and violent world. Mind you, it would have been close to impossible to afford guards anyway, because it's extremely difficult to gather any serious amount of money in the game, since looting corpses isn't a valid option for all types of characters. And while this is a great thing, adding an extra layer of difficulty, it's also incredibly annoying because lots of things, interesting things, cost a lot of money, and there is no solid method of generating money outside of either making potions and selling them or crafting weapons and armor and selling those. But again, neither of those options are really valid to begin with because the raw materials needed for either of them are very rare and hard to come by. You can't work as a caravan guard, for instance, in order to make some solid money. Not that you'd survive the trip, but having the option exist would have mattered.
Despite these minor gripes with Age of Decadence, they didn't lessen the experience of playing the game. That didn't happen one bit. If anything, it actually made me wanna replay the game from a different perspective with a different approach, because I am totally sure and I know for a certain fact that there is a bunch of extra content in there that I haven't even gotten to touch yet.
The great thing about Age of Decadence is that it can be about something completely different depending on the type of background that you choose for your character. During my first playthrough, I was very interested in the mystery of this world. I wanted to know the real story of what happened during the Great War, and as such, I went with playing a lore master. Having finished it with my lore master and finding out a certain bit about the history behind the events of the Great War, I wanted a second playthrough to try a more capable fighter character. So I went with a mercenary background, specialized in wielding a sword and dodging, and as a result had considerably more fights, although mind you, they were still tough as hell, and in some cases they simply weren't surmountable, making me have to reload a much earlier save and take a different path. And that's just how Age of Decadence rolls. You either love and enjoy its hardcore nature, or you don't, and then it's just not for you.
Well, I think I've gone on long enough about the awesomeness that is Age of Decadence, and those of you who would be into this type of game, I think are pretty convinced by now. But just in case you're not and you want to make sure, check out the Age of Decadence Steam page, because the Iron Tower Studio guys actually have a demo. So you can actually try your hand at the game and see if you really like it. Thank you for watching this rather long ass video. If you found it informative, don't forget to like and share it with like-minded individuals, and also check out the rest of my channel for many other movie and game reviews. I make videos each week. I've been Steven Nonsense, and I'll see you soon. Should I not do that? It's actually Blorglot. I make videos every